Okay, now we're recording, so I will post the recording under the resources tab, and I'll put out an announcement once that converts on YouTube. So smoking or tobacco cessation, we often call it smoking cessation because that's the most common form of tobacco that we deal with, but it also includes tobacco as like loose leaf or chewing, cigars, vaping, anything really with nicotine in it. So the CDC, as of 2016, so the past few years have been the CDC's focused on COVID, right? So they have some things kind of got put to the back burner, such as gathering data for smoking and tobacco and vaping. So here in the next year or two, we're going to start to see numbers ramp up again and more surveys happening. But in 2016, cigarette and smokeless tobacco, so smokeless tobacco refers to chewing tobacco, or they call them little snuff packets that you use like you're chewing or have a dip, spent $9.5 billion in advertising. Where do you think where are they advertising?
These days, social media to all the kids.
Social media.
TV. Oh wait, no.
No, they're not allowed to use TV as a platform anymore. They pulled that. Gas stations is a big one. Liquor stores is another one. And really is going to depend on, they focus their market research on areas, specific areas. It tends to be lower income in neighborhoods of minorities, rather than, they're going to target those areas more than upper class areas. And they will also use adult magazines as well. So think of like GQ or Cosmopolitan, focusing on adults. They can't target kids, but they still will use things like Joe Camel or bright colors, something that's going to grab kids' attention. So they're really sneaky about their advertisement. Okay, hold on just a second.
Stacy, Desiree needs in the meeting.
Yes, that's what. Let me. It's not showing her to ask if she can relog in, because it's not showing her to that I can let her in.
Okay, I did.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't pop up while I'm sharing the screen, so we'll wait here for a minute. Who knows how much the average cost of cigarettes are for a pack in Colorado? Anyone? No judgment.
Like $5.
It is now $9.25 for a pack of smokes, and that's average. So that's like your middle of the road Marlboro Reds. I went to a gas station and asked. And so that's a common one, right? Marlboro Reds, middle of the road. Then you have like the cheaper ones that are like the knockoff or version, which are going to be a little bit less. And then you have cigarettes like Newports, Virginia Slims, Cools, are all going to be $2 or $3 more a pack. That's a lot of money to spend. And then you think about people who smoke a pack a day. Still not seeing Desiree. Okay, let me know if she pops in again. I'll see the screen again. Okay. There she is. Okay. But in New York, it's about $15 a pack. What state do you think has the highest cigarette prices? So Utah would have the highest cigarette prices. And what states do you think would be the lowest?
Alabama.
Yep, the South, Alabama, Virginia, Missouri all have. So the South, smoking is more accepted. And right, that's where our tobacco farms are in the United States. So it's going to be cheaper. So it's part of their culture, and it provides people a lot of jobs. So it's going to be a lot cheaper down there. So when somebody quits smoking after 20 minutes, their blood pressure drops, their pulse drops. So why does blood pressure increase and the heart rate increase when somebody smokes? What's physiologically happening?
The nicotine naturally do that.
The nicotine can do that, and what else? Why are we
I mean, are you like
compensating?
vasoconstricting a lot too?
Vasoconstricting, that's the blood pressure. Why is the heart rate going to increase? What are we
Because of
breathing in?
poor oxygenation.
Poor oxygenation, yeah. So we have other chemicals, and carbon monoxide, CO2 is binding to the hemoglobin because it has a higher affinity than oxygen. So after 20 minutes and we start breathing room air, the oxygen is going to bind to the hemoglobin. Our heart no longer needs to compensate. So that's why if you have someone come in and they say they're a smoker and they're in the emergency room, their saturations may look fantastic. And then 15, 20, 30 minutes later, their saturations aren't as good as they were before on room air. It's because the pulse ox, like Justin was showing yesterday, is just checking to see if there's something sitting on the hemoglobin. It's not going to be able to differentiate whether it's oxygen or whether it's CO2. So keep that in mind if you're working in diagnostics and you have to do pre and post. You need to instruct the patient, and then before the appointment not to smoke a half hour to hour before, and then ask again before you perform the test. That way you can have accurate results. 8 hours, carbon monoxide level in the blood drops to normal. So there will still be a little bit lingering around after that 20 minutes. 48 hours, nerve endings start to regrow, and the ability of smell and taste are enhanced. So people go nose blind after being smokers. They're just used to the smell of the smoke, so they can't smell it anymore. The heat also damages nerve endings and affects the sensory. 2 to 12 weeks, circulation improves. So smokers tend to have really cold hands. Lauren, was it Lauren that mentioned the vasoconstriction? So the vasoconstriction in our capillary beds at our fingertips and our toes, they're going to have cold hands. Yep, Justin's already bugging me. So smokers who smoke a long time, it moves from their capillary beds and it starts to get into their vasculature and their arms, but particularly their legs, especially someone who is inactive. They're more likely to have DVT. And then 1 to 9 months, coughing and sinus congestion decreases. So when we smoke, what happens to our cilia?
It stops moving.
Yep, it stops moving. That heat kind of fries it and it kind of makes it sit still. So you hear the smoker's cough. So when they start coughing, their mucus isn't going to be as hydrated with the heat. Their cilia isn't beating properly. And depending on how much they smoke, so if they're a really heavy smoker, and they're one of those people that just light one after the other, it's going to keep frying that cilia. That heat's going to keep it from beating. So when they wake up, it tends to be the worst cough because the cilia doesn't beat at night, but they haven't had a cigarette yet. So their body's trying to cough everything out that it hasn't been able to cough out. At 1 year, that's when we have a risk for heart disease decrease. And it's half of that as a smoker. So it decreases by half of where it was a year before when they were smoking. 5 years, we have a reduced risk of stroke, and then cancer of the mouth, the throat, and the esophagus. How is a smoker going to get esophagus cancer if we're smoking and inhaling into our lungs?
Because when you cough up, you're swallowing it.
Yep,
So
when you cough
chemicals
up.
are still going.
Yep, and if you're breathing, it's smoke, it can still get around the epiglottis. If somebody is a chewer and they're swallowing that, then they're high risk for esophagus and stomach cancer. And then after 10 years of quitting smoking, their health risks are comparable to a non-smoker. Make sure I got all my facts. The AARC said that 480,000 people a year die from tobacco-related diseases. So what are some tobacco-related diseases?
Secondhand smoke.
Emphysema.
Secondhand smoke. What was that, Kara?
Emphysema.
Emphysema,
Lung cancer.
lung cancer.
Maybe like COPD, asthma too.
COPD, asthma, yeah. There are smokers out there who have had asthma since they were kids and they still choose to smoke. That is another big one. So exacerbations, COPD. Good. So quitting before the age of 40 decreases your risk from dying from a smoking related disease by 90%. 90%.
Before the age of what?
40. Yeah, that's a large number. Coronary artery disease or CHF, heart failure, myocardial infarction would be other smoking related diseases. If someone has a history of hypertension and then they're also a smoker, that's going to make it worse. So hypertension can come from smoking, but if they're already have a predisposition due to family where they don't know why, which is really, that's the most common type of hypertension is idiopathic, unknown cause. And they're a smoker as well, that's going to put extra strain on their heart until their heart just is like, I can't do this. There's too much injury and ischemia, and I'm just going to stop working. There are over 4,800 chemicals, and at least 70 of these are cancer causing, and this is in cigarettes. So these are just some examples of what is in a cigarette. Carbon monoxide, copper, tar, nicotine is the big one. And we're going to talk about addiction to tobacco, arsenic, butane, formaldehyde. So some of these chemicals are added for it to burn properly. So it doesn't burn too fast, but it's not burning too slow. Can help it burn evenly and then preserve the flavor and the freshness. I can't remember the year, I want to say it was 2016. President Obama passed a law that it's illegal to sell flavored tobacco. So flavored cigarettes. Excuse me. I know when I was in high school, I was a not great teenager, and I was a smoker for a long time. And they had these cigarettes that tasted like cherries. And, the tobacco companies will try to say, oh, well, we're not marketing to kids, but it's kind of what we're going through with vaping right now, and the vaping juices that are different flavors. You can't tell me that's not marketing to kids. Okay, who do you think smokes the most? What age group?
18 to 25.
Any other guesses?
Middle-aged, like
Fifth.
50s.
I think like geriatric, like 60s, 70s, 80s.
Like the baby boomer stage or whatever.
Baby boomer.
I'm thinking younger.
Okay. So in men, the CDC did a survey. So out of every 100 men, 16 men were smokers, and the group that smoked the most were 25 to 44-year-olds. So 16% of that 16 to 100 per 100 were 25 to 44, and then women, 12 out of the 100, every 100 are smokers, and it's 45 to 64-year-olds. So anywhere between 25 to 64 is going to be our biggest age. So why would women tend to be older smokers? What are your thoughts?
Maybe after having kids? I don't know. Just a thought.
Right, maybe after having kids. I like that one. But if you think about 45 to 64 now, and this was even a couple years ago, men tend to have a lower life expectancy, right? And that bracket of women, the men in that generation were in Vietnam. They tended to die younger because medicine hadn't evolved. And men tend to smoke more cigarettes per day. Why do you think men, and there's no right or wrong answer, why do you think men would smoke more than women? Open discussion.
My grandfather died of heart and lung cancer. He smoked 10 packs a day.
Holy cow.
He literally had a lighter. He would light one in the morning and just light the next one
With
with the cigarette.
Cigarette. Mm-hmm.
He was a World War II veteran. He lived into his like late 70s, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, he literally smoked half a carton a day. It was nuts.
That's so, cartons are they're like $100 for a carton now. A
I
carton
feel like
has,
too, like, oh, sorry.
no, you're fine.
My grandma's like almost 89 and she's smoked her whole life since she was 18. But I feel like back then, didn't they not have as many chemicals in them? So it's like they weren't ever healthy, but it was better than it is now.
I can't say 100%, but I believe so. I believe so. Yeah, it's crazy to me. And so my dad's parents smoked, and neither one of them died from a cigarette tobacco related disease, but my mom's dad smoked and he died in his mid 40s. He was a World War II veteran of lung cancer. So it's just not everybody who smokes is going to, we never know what we're going to, what is going to bring us to our end. And then my husband's uncle, he's my parents' age, and he smokes, and he has stage 4 lung cancer, which is in remission, which is a miracle. And he's been a smoker his entire life. But then my father-in-law is also a smoker, and he's in his 70s, and he just found out he had AFib, but he's like 74. So it was inevitable something's going to happen, but it's not related to smoking. So it's just people even in the same family may have different fates. It's so crazy.
A
Our
pattern I saw, sorry, I was just gonna
Go
say a
ahead.
pattern I saw like with smokers is like they're fine while they're smoking and then they choose to quit smoking. And all of a sudden they start seeing the health causes and things start flaring up.
Yeah, I've seen that. And then sometimes I wonder, is that does your body know something before you recognize something's going on, right? Just a theory. So I smoked for a long time until I was in my mid-20s. And then I woke up one day and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna smoke anymore. And I just stopped. I didn't need tobacco cessation or patches or gum or Chantix or anything. And then I found out a few weeks later I was pregnant. So it was my body's way of telling me something. There was a reason. I just didn't want to do it anymore. Not common, but I'm grateful that I did.
Stacey, that's weird that you said that. My best friend was a smoker like her whole life. And then at like 26, she found out she was pregnant, but like probably 4 months before that, she stopped smoking and like obviously wasn't pregnant then, but it was like just weird how it happened. And she like always says that too. She's like, maybe it did have something to do with that. I don't know. Like,
that is crazy. Yeah, because I was 26 too when I was pregnant. Are light cigarettes better for you than like full flavored? Nope, it's just the flavoring. Okay. So secondhand smoke. Secondhand smoke is passive smoking. So it's, exhaling. It's when you're exposed, when you're in somebody's car and they're smoking, or you're in somebody's house and they're smoking. Or if you're standing outside and you have to walk through a group of people and someone's smoking and you walk through their smoke, that drives me crazy. And there's two forms of it. There's side stream, which comes from the end of the cigarette. And then there's mainstream, which is that smoke that's exhaled from the person that's smoking. It's also called passive smoking. And then you have third hand smoke. And that's the chemicals that remain in your hair, on your clothes, on their hands, or in the air. So like if someone smokes in their car and it sticks into that leather or into the cloth of their seats and on the walls, that's third hand smoke. So, and it's still harmful. Secondhand smoke is going to be more harmful because you have the heat coming with it as well. But third hand smoking is also harmful.
Stacey, what's the other one you said? The side stream and the other one?
So side stream is from the end of the cigarette. So it's from the lit part of the cigarette, or if someone's smoking a pipe, it's from the tobacco burning itself, whereas mainstream is going to be what's exhaled from the person's lungs. And that could be marijuana as well, right? So we talk a lot about tobacco, but marijuana, it's still, if you're smoking it, it's still going to be harmful. There's not as many chemicals in it, but it's still, anytime you smoke anything, you're adding heat to your lungs, it's not good for you. So third hand smoke is especially bad for children, right? Especially young children, they put their face in it, or you have a mom that smokes and she doesn't wear like a special jacket or gloves or anything when she smokes, and then she holds baby. She's putting that baby's face right against the clothes where it's going to linger. Okay, let's talk about e-cigarettes. They're not currently FDA regulated like cigarettes and other forms of tobacco are, but the FDA did rule in 2018 that they have to list the ingredients that are in their products. So any new product has to list ingredients that are in their product. That this made it illegal to sell to those under the age of 18. And they have to register their establishment. So they have to register their business that creates them, their marketing, and how they sell them. So it wasn't until like 4 years ago, anyone under the age of 18 could buy them. Make sure I got all that. Oh, and that's when they also added warning statements to ends. So electronic nicotine delivery systems, or they can be called electronic nicotine delivery devices. So vaping, there's vape pens, there's vape everything. If you can find a way to smoke it, they will make a vaping device. And they're sneaky. They have them in like hoodies, and you'll see kids puffing them in class. Oh, it makes me nervous for when Marilyn's older.
Girl, that's my battle right now. Like with my daughter's drama going on, and they just want to all hang out in the bathroom smoking whatever, whether it's weed or nicotine or whatever. Like, I feel bad for the school staff that has to, you know, constantly deal with it all. It's constant.
Yeah, and then you never know really what they're getting, right? Especially if they're buying it online and they're not buying it from like a dispensary or like a smoker friendly or a smoke shop, and they're getting it off the black market. They're doing it on Amazon. They don't know what's in it. So that those are going to be even more harmful than the ones that are meant for their intended uses.
I try to scare my daughter. I tell her there's fentanyl and everything.
That is no joke. No, that's the thing now too. Yeah. So you never know. Was it last year or the year before, someone was trying to make their own hash oil, and there was an explosion on their compound and everything caught on fire and someone was in critical condition. I was like, oh my goodness, it's crazy. What do you think would be how do I want to word it? Do you think this has more or less chemicals than a cigarette? I saw more. About the same, but different chemicals. But there's going to be more of a variety, right? Because the flavorings are going to be different. The additives are going to be different. Are we getting away from heat? Is it actually vapor? What is vapor?
Water.
Water, right? Mist.
This is wax, right?
It can be like a wax, or like vitamin E oil is what they're finding is causing vape-associated lung injury or valley. And it's the carrier oils. It's all oils. But this is aerosolized oils, pretty much. It's not vapor.
Well, then you're smoking it from a battery too, which doesn't seem healthy.
Ideal, right? No.
Yeah.
So with a battery, that was going to be my next point. What can we adjust on the battery?
The wattage.
The wattage, yeah. So we can
Heat.
increase the heat. So we're still getting the heat. So we don't have the tar burning, but we still have the heat burning. So it's different reasons that we're getting injury to the lungs. So down the road, who knows if we're going to see more COPD patients at a younger age, we don't know yet, right? We just have to let time show us what's going to happen. Do you think this is going to be a good alternative for someone to quit smoking, which is a topic of our discussion board today?
I think it could be a good weaning process. But then you'd kind of still, I feel like, I mean, there's ups and like positives and negatives to it as well, because it's more socially okay to do that indoors than like lighting up a cigarette. So yeah.
I think you're
Yeah.
trading one set of like injuries or issues for another, like a totally different set, but they're on the same level.
Exactly. I agree.
Yep. I would agree with that. I think somebody would have to be really careful and want to quit, because also if you're adding, it's easy to say, okay, I've smoked 2 cigarettes today. Whereas with an e-cigarette, it's going to be harder to measure because every puff is going to be different. And you have different levels of nicotine in different juices. And so I think it would be harder to control yourself unless you get like a prepackaged Juul or something like that that already has the nicotine set and you're not refilling it. But then, well, I think I took 4 puffs, but I don't know. So it's like you said, I feel like it has the good and the bad issues with it. There's over 15,000 flavors. 15,000 flavors. That's a ridiculous amount of flavors and combinations. So diacetyl is a flavoring chemical that's used in popcorn, so like buttered popcorn. And it's also used as an additive for certain flavors. But workers who were exposed to this flavor and inhaling it when they are producing like microwave popcorn developed what they called popcorn lung, which is a bronchiolitis, and it causes obliterations in the lungs and does permanent lung damage. So it's FDA approved for us to eat, but we can't inhale it. It causes popcorn lung. So now these different flavorings are causing different lung injuries based on their chemical makeup. Strawberry flavoring is cytotoxic. And then cinnamon decreases the movement of cilia even more than just the heat itself. And 1 Juul pod has the same amount of nicotine as 4 packs of cigarettes. 4 packs of cigarettes. So somebody who's trying to quit and they're like, oh, I'll just get a Juul. Really, if they're not really working to quit, they could become even more addicted. So EVALI, which is electronic vaping associated lung injury. THC products have caused 82% of these injuries, and these are young injuries. So these are teenagers, middle schoolers, early 20s. 82% of those injuries were caused by THC products, and nicotine, it was 57% of cases. Why do you think THC products would be so high? Do you think it's the weed itself, the THC itself, causing this?
Is it like the chemicals they put in there to kind of burn the THC compared to the nicotine, like the nicotine or tobacco?
Yep, it could be. Because you think about it, how many states have legalized marijuana? There's only a handful of us, right? And we have to be 21 to buy it. Doesn't mean that they can't, swipe it from their parents or get a friend to buy it, or, those that are in their early 20s are buying it on their own. But those products are going to be more regulated. They have to follow certain boundaries and guidelines to produce those products, whereas somebody who is making their own hash oil in their house and trying to sell it to others and is not using the right steps or the proper substances. And these kids or people are buying it. Technically, it's considered the black market because it's not legal. And they're buying it, they're going to have more adverse effects. Makes sense. And then same with nicotine, or just, you know, using juice after juice after juice. There's a really funny, is anyone in South Park fan? There's a really funny episode where Butters starts selling e-cigarettes to the kindergartners. So if you haven't watched that one, I highly recommend it. It's hilarious. That's what I think about every time I do this lecture. So it's really hurting our young people. So who's doing the ALA thing with Derek? So if you have a chance, I know they're putting together curriculum now, and they're doing piglins and talking about smoking cessation and the dangers of smoking, but they're also going to incorporate vaping into it as well. So if you have a chance to go out and teach kids, this is a very important part of our job, is being able to have these open conversations with our patients, with their family. Kids may be more willing to talk to you when their parents aren't there, and just being able to talk to them openly and let them know that you're safe, a safe person to talk to, without reprimanding them or telling them what they should or should not do, because we were all kids, right? At one point, if your parents said, don't do this, what did you do? Go do it. Well, okay, the majority go do it anyway, right? You can't tell me what to do, or it makes me cool. Peer pressure are all things that we're going to deal with when these kids decide to use vaping products. Okay, so chew or snuff. Yummy, huh? So we're going to treat this addiction the same way. We may use ends. So there's people that have chewed or used snuff and then started to use ends or vaping, and it's still not recommended. And there's not enough studies done that prove that that's a safe alternative. Causes mouth, throat, and jaw cancer. And holding the average size dip. So I don't know exactly what the average size dip is, but pinching the tobacco and then just putting it in between the teeth and the cheek for 30 minutes can give you as much nicotine as 3 cigarettes. So there's people that spit, but there's also people that swallow the saliva, and they're gonna the looks on some of your faces, that was great. They're going to be more likely to have stomach cancer.
How many cigarettes did you say 1 30-minute dip equaled?
3.
Stacey, you might talk about this, and I know there's probably like plenty of things, obviously, that chewing causes, but like the most typical like cancers associated with it are what?
Are going to be jaw and throat cancer.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So a Marlboro Red has 13 milligrams of nicotine per cigarette. So these are per cigarette. Marlboro Lights, 13 milligrams. Remember, this is just showing that full flavored versus lights versus ultra lights have the same amount of nicotine. It's just different flavoring. Pipe tobacco has 30 to 50 milligrams of nicotine per bowl. It's going to depend on the size as well, or how full it is. Cigars typically have 10 to 40 milligrams of nicotine, depending on the size and the tobacco leaf. And then chewing tobacco can have up to 14 milligrams. And then e-cigarettes and liquids is going to vary, whether it's like individual use, like a jewel pod that's pre-filled and is not refillable, to 6 to 36 milligrams per ml. So the person's able to choose the concentration. Are they refilling it? Are they starting with the highest nicotine dose and then decreasing it to try and quit? Nicotine added to tobacco products wasn't FDA regulated until July of 2017. That wasn't that long ago. So nicotine is more addictive than heroin or cocaine. So if you see in rehab centers, they always let them smoke if they're smokers. And longtime addicts will say, I can give up alcohol, I can give up heroin, I can give up marijuana, but I have a hard time giving up cigarettes. I just can't give up cigarettes. So there's a three-link chain. It's biological, psychological, and sociocultural. And we'll talk about each of these. So biological, it's a physical drug dependence, because the nicotine from the tobacco product is going to bind to those nicotinic receptors. And those nicotinic receptors, when they're stimulated, release dopamine in the brain. What is dopamine?
Happy.
Happy, yep, a
Yeah.
happy chemical. It gives
There
that
you go.
feeling of euphoria. And it only releases that dopamine for 3 seconds. So it's that, so people tend to feel stressed, and that may be a trigger to smoke because it's going to give them that rush of dopamine. But it's never going to feel the same as the first time, right? So they're chasing that first feeling of smoking, that first rush of happy dopamine feeling. Withdrawal can happen within hours, and it's truly like a drug dependence. When somebody quits, their most severe cravings are within the first 2 weeks, as with many other addictive drugs. People can have cravings that may last years. Let me restate that. So they may have cravings, episodes of cravings that may last months, weeks, years, or they might have cravings forever. Oh man, I really want a cigarette right now. Or every time they have that trigger, they want a cigarette, and it may last forever. It may last a year, and then they don't even think about it anymore. So people are going through withdrawal when they quit smoking, cranky, may feel depressed, may feel anxious. They may not know what to do with themselves. Increased appetite. What is that increased appetite filling in?
Is it filling the void of not doing the act of smoking anymore?
It could be that. They may find that they get that dopamine release from certain foods. So now they're trying to fill that release of dopamine with something else. People may get super busy and always have to be doing something. It depends. Finding something for them to do with their hands. Typically, cravings last for about 5 minutes. 5 to 10 minutes. If they can get through that 5 to 10 minutes, then they can be okay. Now, cravings, there's no set time limit. Cravings may be back to back, or minutes apart, or they could be hours apart, or it can be just certain times of day. So while they only last 5 to 10 minutes, they may be close together, which make it feel like it's lasting all night. Psychological, we have automatic behaviors. We automatically light a cigarette every time we get in the car. We automatically put a dip in when we get to work. So people who work outside are more likely to have a harder time quitting because maybe they're in a profession where it's socially acceptable to smoke or chew while they're on the job. Talking on the phone. I have this cute little lady who she coded on Christmas in our CI, and it wasn't great, but she came back and she was with us for months. And then she ended up in our inpatient rehab. She was one of my favorite patients. And so I'd go see her every night and we'd talk. And every time she got on the phone, she started talking on the phone, she would light up a cigarette. So she had to find something else to do. Otherwise she would keep smoking. And she was so cute. She was a frequent flyer. And so after the last time when she stayed for months, she was like, I quit smoking. I finally quit and I stayed quit. And but talking on the phone is a big one after a meal and then waking up. Psychological addiction, coping mechanisms, they're stressed out. If they're stressed and then they smoke and then they release dopamine, it's kind of that feeling.
Do you remember that episode of Friends when they had the alternate universe episode when Phoebe was like a stockbroker?
Mhm.
Every time she get a phone call about a business deal, she'd light up a cigarette and she had a heart attack.
I did
Jason,
not
that's
see
so
it.
funny that's so funny that you said that, because that's all I've been thinking about since I started this lecture.
Her phone would ring and she'd go, hang on, and she'd pull out a cigarette and light it, and then she'd open up her phone and say, okay, go. She ended up having a heart attack at the end of the episode.
Oh man. Well, and now you see it's people don't smoke as much in the movies or on TV. My sister and I were trying to quit when we were really young. But then we started watching Mad Men, which is a show about an advertising agency in the 60s. Everybody smoked back then. And we're like, oh, I cannot even, now this is making me want to have a cigarette. So we had to stop watching for a while. Yeah. And now even on Netflix, I noticed that's in one of their, like you have like the disclaimers, like violence, nudity, graphic scenes, whatever, smoking language, smoking is now one of them, which I found interesting. Drug use. Yeah, so our society is definitely changing. So social gatherings, right? Depending on your crowd or your setting, it may be acceptable to smoke. I don't know what it is about drinking that sometimes people only are like, I really want a cigarette. And I'm like, I didn't know you smoked. Oh, well, I've been drinking and I really want to smoke. I don't know what that is about. But it happens. All in the family. So 80% of children who smoke have had smoking parents. Which I find interesting because both my parents' smoked and neither one of them are smokers. But then both of my sister and I ended up smoking when we were young. And both of us have quit. So that's good. But very interesting. So when we start talking smoking cessation with our patient, we need to make sure that the patient is ready. They have to be ready. They have to want to quit. Just like with any other addiction, they have to want to do it. We can't force somebody to do it, and we shouldn't make somebody feel bad because they don't want to quit. Reprimanding them is not going to make them want to do it. Making them feel guilty isn't going to make them want to do it. It's just going to create issues for you and your patient, right? If you meet someone who comes in and they say they're a smoker and you tell them, well, that's not good for you. You're already sick. You need to quit. Do you think they're going to want to do treatments? Do you think they're going to be happy every time you come into their room? No. So we're going to talk about the 5 A's. If they tell you that they're ready, then a sign that they'll show you is they'll set a quit date. They'll keep talking about a quit date. Maybe we have somebody who's in pulmonary rehab who's in smoking cessation. That's going to be one of the first things we talk about is having a quit date. And they know at that day, that's going to be, it's hyping themselves up. They know, okay, my aunt's quit date was October 20th, which is Marilyn's birthday. So she's like, I'm going to quit on Marilyn's birthday. And she knows it's coming. They can prepare, they can, do what they need to do. We're going to talk about different ways that, if driving is a trigger, having the car detailed, and then, on that day, you're going to have everything in place. You're going to have your gum if they want to choose gum. And you're going to talk to them about their plan to quit, and they know what day they're going to start. So the 5 A's we're going to ask. So that's asking about tobacco use. So be able to list these and then what they mean. So asking is, hey, can we talk? Do you mind if we talk about your smoking? Do you mind if we talk about your chewing? Hey, can you tell me about your tobacco use in a approachable, kind manner? We're not accusing them of being bad people, and we don't want to make them feel guilty. We want to advise them to quit. So that's using motivational interviewing techniques, which there are some resources on Blackboard in today's content on how to use that, which we'll talk more about. So advising to quit is we really want to put the conversation in their court. We want to say, well, how does smoking make you feel? What are some good things about it? What are some not so good things? What would you change about it? So giving them the control of the conversation and letting them be open with you. And while we're doing this, we're assessing their willingness to make an attempt. So we're going to look at the next slide's a chart, and we're by what they're telling us, do we think they're ready to quit, or are they just having a conversation because they need to talk about it, right? Everybody has come to points in their life where they know a decision they need to make. They're just not quite there yet. If they say something like, I'm ready to quit, this is my quit date, we want to help with that attempt, give them the literature that they need, the resources they need. If we're working for somewhere, university has a great smoking cessation team that works and follows up with patients to help prevent relapse, which we will also talk about, and then follow up. So in the acute hospital setting, it's going to be hard to follow up with these patients. If we're working with the smoking cessation team, or we're working with pulmonary rehab, or maybe we're working with a pulmonologist office, we'll be able to follow up with them. If we're working in the acute setting, we need to at least be able to give a resource to the patient that they can call if they feel they need to talk or they need more information. The quit line, Colorado Quit Line, is an excellent resource for that. So motivational interviewing, here we're assessing if they're against change or they're towards change. Has anyone had that experience of a patient who just does not want to quit and they're someone is not, have you guys witnessed that they've been approached in maybe an aggressive manner and then the patient just lets the provider have it? Have you seen that yet? No. Has anyone seen a good example about talking about somebody's tobacco use? What did it look like?
I saw one lady at during my first rotation. She was in there for like just like asthma exacerbations, but she said she had quit like 3 weeks before. So like our my preceptor was just like kind of praising her for like quitting, but she was still having like some breathing issues and everything. That's what brought her back. But I don't know. They were just being very positive about the fact that she is actually like putting in the effort to quit.
Good. Yeah, that positive reinforcement. That's good because there are providers that would have said things like, well, you should have quit sooner. We need to flip it. And yes, that positive reinforcement is going to help. There's this, I went to do a protocol on a patient one night, and the nurse was in there admitting and asking about the tobacco use as I walked in. And she goes, well, you know, you shouldn't smoke, right? You have COPD. And this older gentleman like flew out of the bed. And so do you think he was going to talk to me about it after somebody gave him the no. So, and at some point, if somebody is in their mid 80s and they're still smoking, you kind of got to think, is this person really going to change, right? Let's just treat them like a human and not make them feel guilty. And at that point, personally, I'm like, he's lived this long, just be happy, quality of life. But so being positive about it. And if someone says they don't want to talk about it, or do you smoke? Yes. How many packs a day? 2 packs a day. Well, tell me. And they're like, I don't know. I smoke. I know it's not good for me. And I don't care what you say. Just move on and stop bringing up the issue. Because then in the future, they're just going to become more defensive and more defensive and more defensive and less willing to change or think about changing their habit. Make sense? Okay. Okay, let's take a break and we will come back at 9:15. Okay, so we're going to talk a little more about motivational interviewing. So the first thing we're going to do is like that first A. We're going to ask. We're going to get permission to talk about their addiction. If we're working in a smoking cessation program or we're working pre-pulmonary rehab and we're interviewing, they have given us permission to talk about it. They know that this is something that we are going to discuss on that initial assessment. And then reflective listening. So the 2 key steps is we're going to seek understanding of the speaker's ideas. So this is putting the ball in their court. And then we are going to confirm an idea with the speaker. So if the person we're talking to says, you know, I really want to quit smoking and I have a really hard time quitting when I'm at work. I do fine when I'm at home, but I just want to smoke all the time while I'm at work. And then they go on to tell you about their smoke breaks and how much they smoke. Then that would be you saying, that's step 1, listening. Step 2 is saying, so what I'm hearing is when you go outside, you have to have 2 cigarettes at lunch because you can eat lunch at the picnic bench in the smoking area. So that way you're telling them, hey, I am listening. I hear what you're saying. And then it clarifies so that there's no misunderstanding. Or it's opening up, well, I never thought of it that way. I didn't realize that I go to that same picnic bench to have lunch because I can smoke there. So that reflective listening, and really this is something that we should practice with our patients in general. So when you're first meeting a patient and you're doing a protocol, instead of saying, how are you feeling? And then just letting them talk and then just going and doing your vital assessment. If you're, for example, you're in the ED with a patient who's coming in for an asthma exacerbation, or they feel they have a respiratory illness, and you say, how are you feeling? And they're telling you, I've been coughing since this morning. I've spitting up mucus. My chest feels heavy. It's saying, okay, I hear that you're having a hard time breathing, and that your chest is hurting. Can you tell me how long it's been hurting? Or on a scale of 1 to 10, what's it feel like? How's your, so they know that you're listening and you're not just, checking boxes and writing things down. That's going to make your patients feel like they're being heard. And in the end, it's going to make you treating those patients easier. They're going to be more willing to do what you ask, or to work with you. Okay, then the next step is normalizing. And normalizing is intended to communicate that it's difficult to change. So you hear that this patient, she goes outside on her smoke break and sits at that picnic bench during lunch. And so that's you saying, I know you can't quit your job. You always have to work. But I know it's going to be hard for you to change that habit of going out to that same place every day. I know it's going to be hard to handle the stresses without smoking. So knowing that you acknowledge that changes are hard and that it's not going to be easy, and not making them feel guilty about what they've been doing in the past. And then decision balancing. So this is again talking about what is good and what is bad about the change. So I know that it's going to be hard for you to not go outside and smoke during your lunch break and change your routine at work, because I know you're in a stressful environment and we're adding a little bit more stress. But what are some things that you find good? And if they say, I don't know, you can say things like, you're going to feel proud of yourself for quitting. You're going to be able to go to lunch with coworkers, or maybe you could run errands on your lunch, or you can be more productive. Whatever, if they need help, you can find the good things in it besides just your health. Yes, that's good, but finding other little things that are going to be key motivation factors, because at first it's going to be hard to see the health benefits unless you're in the medical profession and you know that your heart's going to, your heart rate's going to go down, your coughing is going to get better. They're not seeing those instant gratifications, helping them find those. And then talking about the bad, because if we sweep the bad under the rug, it's going to come back to, well, they never said that I would have to do this, or they never said I had no idea it was going to be this bad. If you talk about the bad of the change, you can figure out how to help get through those bad times. I swear I'm allergic to work. So it's, you may have these cravings come right before lunchtime, and it's going to be hard to get through them, but here's A, B, C, and D. Maybe you could take an earlier lunch or a later lunch. Maybe you can have someone that you go talk to, or someone that you call on the phone to get through the goods and the bads. The readiness ruler. So that's, again, looking back at that arrow and figuring out how ready the patient is to quit. And that'll help also with the quit date, deciding when we can set the quit date. Advice giving, so tips and tricks for them that will help them succeed in what they're trying to achieve. And then refer, so offering help from quit lines, offering help from other programs. Maybe it's offering help getting chewing gum or patches or Chantix. So I can never play these on Zoom, but these videos are on Blackboard. So stages of change. And a lot of these carry over to other addictions as well. So no one is going to quit what they want to quit or what their addiction is unless they want to do it. We can't force somebody to do something. So we have pre-contemplation, and this is that patient who says, I won't, I can't. I don't care. I'm not going to talk about this. I've been smoking for years. I don't want to quit smoking. I like smoking. Okay, well, we're in pre-contemplation. This patient does not want to quit. Let's talk about this another day. Contemplation, they have reasons for continuing to smoke or continuing to vape or continuing to chew, and they have reasons against changing and quitting. So I know I have put myself at higher risk and I don't like the way it smells, but I just really like the way it feels and I'm just so used to it. And then preparation is I want to, but I have a huge meeting at work. I want to, but my life is so stressful right now, or I'm going through school, or it's always something's always going on that they can't quit yet. But you know they're getting close, they're seriously thinking about it. And then action is going to that I want to, but that but drops off. I want to quit. So they're going to do it. So they're actively, you know, whether it's cold turkey or they've set a quit date, or they're using Chantix, whatever it is, they're in the process of quitting. And then maintenance, so not smoking is now a habit. Not smoking is now a habit. And maintenance and relapse go hand in hand, right? So we think of relapse as drugs and alcohol, but relapse can also be cigarettes because it is also a drug. The biggest risk of relapse is going to happen during that action period. That action stage takes willpower. So that willpower and relapse is going to be the greatest risk here. And then we have relapse where it's, oops, you know, I have a slip up and I just had a cigarette. It was a weak moment. I'm going to move on. I'm done. Relapse is going, or can be, I've started smoking as a habit again. So here is our readiness ruler. During that motivational interviewing, we are talking to them and we are gathering statements and we're really listening and determining, are they really ready? Are they moderately ready, or are they low readiness? I don't want to quit. I never want to quit. I like the way smoking feels. I want to chew tobacco. I'm fine with this. And then you have keywords like I'm thinking about quitting, or I know I should, but yeah, I've tried in the past, but I'm not sure, you know, if this is the right time. Those are all going to be moderate. And then high readiness is I've had enough. I'm so sick. I'm tired of coming to the hospital with asthma exacerbations. I've tried to quit before and then I smoked again, but now I'm, you know, I threw my cigarettes away. That's always a big one. I threw my cigarettes away. I threw my lighter away.
Stacey, a big thing like when I was in college was a lot of the girls didn't want to stop smoking because they felt like it helped them lose weight because they didn't have as much of an appetite.
Mm-hmm.
So like that was a huge thing. I feel like I don't know if that's still with like that same age group now, but I feel like that was a big thing when I was in college.
I think it is because it's that dopamine release is what it is. Yeah. So food can do the same thing. And it's also that hand to mouth fixation. So you'll notice a lot of people who used to be smokers like I hold a pencil or a pen a lot. It's that there's always something in my hand. And when I quit, and I would still have cravings after I had Marilyn, if it was super stressful, like that was the first thing I thought of when I found out she was sick. I was like, I was stressed, and that was my instant stress thing. So then I started doing like hand embroidery, and I always was working with my hand, and it would pass. I knew it would pass. But so this is perfect timing for this. So when we have cravings, people can randomly have cravings. They haven't been a smoker for a really long time, but then all of a sudden something triggers them. You'll see it in movies too, where, there's a death of someone, or there's some huge, a mom starts smoking and the kids are like, what are you doing? We've never seen you smoke. Well, then something bad had happened. It's being able to deal with those cravings and not go back to that old habit. So you can relapse, early on or later, and a lot of time has passed. So it's knowing what to expect. So knowing their triggers. So if someone's driving's a huge one. People will, when you interview them, when I drive to work, I know I can have 2 cigarettes, and I light one when I leave the house, and then I light a second one when I'm at said cross street. So choosing different routes to work or common places might help. Removing the ashtray, which a lot of modern cars don't have ashtrays, or cigarette lighters. There's probably some of you that are young enough that have never seen a cigarette lighter in a car. You pay extra for those. It's where you plug in your phone cord charger.
Well, and Stacey, I was going to tell you too, I think a lot of people use it for like work, like excuses to take a break from work. Like when I worked in the service industry, that's why everybody smoked, because that was their excuse to get a break. And all the time, like my friend and I would be like, we should be smokers, because then we'll get like a 15-minute break and we can go outside, but
yeah,
like that's I think the other part of it too is sometimes I feel like they use that as a break.
That's a good point. That is a good point. You should take breaks though. You should. And so that's going to be another thing, like the lunch breaks, so smoke breaks, they're going to have to find something else to do. Even if it's going out to like a different area and playing a game, setting a timer on their phone and playing like Candy Crush or a word game for 15 minutes, and then going back inside, because they're still getting up and moving. It's just they're doing something different and they're still using their hands.
I had a friend who would fill his pockets with Dum Dum suckers, and every time he had a craving, he would just eat a Dum Dum sucker.
That's a good idea. I like that one.
So I quit smoking like 6 years ago, and I still have Altoids with me all the time because I use the gum to quit. And what I started to recognize was that I would feel the burn in the back of my throat. And that was when I knew I was going to feel better. And so I found the strongest Altoids I could find that burned the back of my throat. And I still, like, even the smallest inconvenience or anything that stresses me out, I always have fresh breath.
There you go. Right? I like it. I like the Altoid trick. And you always hear new tricks from other people that you talk to. And there's no right or wrong. People just find what works for them.
My biggest thing was, I know this is probably the most expensive way to quit, but I bought a new car. And that was my thing, is I always smoked when I was driving. And I was like, nobody's smoking in this new car, because I love the smell of it.
I love the smell of a new car.
Yeah.
I did that too. I didn't get a brand new car, but I got a car that had never been smoked in. And that's what stopped me from smoking. And because I loved going for drives and smoking. And I stopped doing that too. But then I also did the sucker thing, Kara, where when I was driving, I would suck on a sucker because it gave me the hand to mouth motion.
That's a good one. Yeah, I'll still get cravings. I'm like, ooh. So funny story. I went out. So it was a bunch of RTs. We went out for my bachelorette party, and we went to the bars, and we'd been drinking. And one of my friends was like bumming cigarettes from my sister, because my sister hadn't quit at the time. And she went up to these firefighters and asked for a light. And I was like, really? And I mean, she had been quit for years. So it's that she goes, I thought you could put out fire, thought you'd have fire. And I was like, come on. Entertaining. So a bunch of RTs. And I never saw her smoke again, but it was that weird while you're drinking. I don't know why that is. Maybe memories.
That was the hardest thing for me when I quit. It's Christmas Eve this year will be 8 years since I quit.
Nice.
But yeah, going to like, yeah, if you're out at a bar, it was like not being a part of that group anymore was the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like when I was quitting, it was like I never really thought about it until like we'd like go out to a bar, and it was like, yeah, it's just like they go hand in hand for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's weird. We went on a trip to South Dakota, and we went into a restaurant, and they asked smoking or non-smoking. I was like, whoa, I haven't heard that for years. I think that, yeah, it's been over 10 years. It's been almost 20 years since Colorado banned that. I was like, there's still places. It's crazy. So being able to handle cravings in the mornings, changing wake up routines are going to help. And you can really, when you interview someone and you talk to them about when they have their first cigarette of the day, really gives you a glimpse into how hard it may be for them to quit. Like, has anyone seen the movie Easy Money with Rodney Dangerfield? It's so funny, but he literally has a pack of cigarettes and a lighter and an ashtray next to his bed. And the first thing he does is he sits up in bed and he starts smoking in the morning. So somebody that's the first thing they do, compared to, I was a smoker who I'd make coffee and I'd take a shower and I'd get ready for the day, and then I'd go outside and I'd smoke. I can just change my routine a little bit. Whereas someone who that's the first thing they do, they're really going to have to work on changing their routine, and they're going to crave as soon as they wake up. Okay, do or don't. Do respect the smoker. They are in charge. It's not your opinion, or you are entitled to your opinion. It doesn't mean that you have to tell them your opinion, right? So they're in charge. They should be leading the conversation. You can give them questions and guide them so that you can get the information that you need. And always, you don't have to answer right away. You can sit and think. That's something that I have, even when I'm talking with you guys, sometimes I have a hard time just I feel like I have to answer like right away. Letting my thoughts process and then answering is going to be the best for both of you. Help get them info that they need, the resources, the Chantix, whatever they need, even helping them with the good RX card, because so here's my soapbox. A lot of insurances won't cover Chantix, and Chantix is stupid expensive, which I don't understand, because it's going to cost more money in the long run if someone doesn't quit smoking, right, with health care bills. So helping them find resources to pay for it if that's the way they want to go. You want to plan the follow-up contact. Help keep their mind off cigarettes. So changing the topic, if it's somewhere in the hospital in the acute care setting and they have a nicotine patch, helping them keep their mind off of it. They can't go outside and have a cigarette. Campuses are smoke-free now. And people will leave AMA to have a cigarette and then go back through the ED. Has anyone seen that yet? It's not.
Yeah, I've seen that a lot.
It's pretty bad. And then be positive. So like Jason's example, just reinforcing that that's awesome that they're trying. Oops. And that they have made this choice for themselves. And then positive enforcement for relapses. So relapses with anything. People are going to make mistakes. It happens. AARC has good resources as well. So not telling them, oh, well, you messed up. How are you going to do it now? People go through stressful situations. Don't take it personally if they're grumpy. and they're quitting, right? It's not you. It's they're going through withdrawal, right? And depending on how long they've smoked, it could be years and years and years, and they're changing a major part of their life. Don't offer unsolicited advice. If they tell you they don't want to talk about it, just let it be. Don't start treating them differently. Don't give them the cold shoulder. Don't nag them. It's going to make them worse than before. And other people have treated them this way, and you don't want to be grouped in with that. Oh, well, they don't care about me. They're just here to get their paycheck. So pharmacology, everybody's favorite, of smoking cessation. So we have to assess the level of dependency. So that's talking with the patient about at what part of the day do they start smoking? Are they one of those that start smoking every morning as soon as they get up? And we also, when we're interviewing them, want to make them feel safe and trusted, so that they're telling us the truth, right? We don't want to have to assume, okay, well, you tell me because you're ashamed because someone's ashamed you before, that you smoke half a pack of cigarettes a day, but I can tell by the clubbing on your fingers and your yellow nails and your cough that you smoke a lot more than that. We want them to feel like they can be honest with us without judgment. So assessing the level of dependency, because we want to manage the withdrawal. So we're going to look at the amount, and we'll go through the dosages. So the amount is the dosage that we talk about, the route, and then managing symptoms and cravings and how they're going to handle that. So we're going to give a Fagerstrom test, F-A-G-E-R, Strom, S-T-R-O-M. And that's a test for dependency. So it's, filling out the boxes and then adding it up. And that's going to help us with the level of dependency. But our patients have to be open and honest with us.
Stacey, what did you say that was called again?
Fagerstrom, F-A-G-E-R-S-T-R-O-M.
Okay, thank you.
Nicotine replacement therapy, so NRTs. A common one is the nicotine patch. Nicoderm CQ is a common brand. You can get this over the counter and is part of the Colorado Quitline free program. It should not be used if you were smoking. It can come in 7, 14, and 21 milligram patches, and we're going to provide those based on how much they smoke a day. So somebody who smokes a pack or more a day is going to have the 21 milligrams. A half a pack to a pack a day is going to be 14, and then anything less than a half a pack per day is going to be 7. It should be about an 8-week treatment. These treatment times are not set in stone, but a kind of a guideline. So somebody who's a heavier smoker may take longer than 8 weeks. Somebody who's, quit before or is only an occasional user may take less than 8 weeks. There is a constant release of nicotine into this capillary beds on the arm or the shoulder or the back. A side effect can be nightmares or insomnia. So if the patient has either symptom, they should take their nicotine patch off at night. So if we start at the 21 milligram patches, we want to taper down. So after 2 weeks, we taper to 14. Then after 2 weeks after that, we taper to 7. Okay, the gum or the lozenges, Nicorette or Commit, 2 milligrams or 4 milligrams are available And how you chew this, you don't chew it like regular gum. You chew it enough to crack the like candy coating, and then you place it between the gum and the cheek, and let it absorb through the mucosa in the gums. And so that you have the proper effect, you need to follow the directions. It should not be chewed at the same time as typical regular gum, because the ingredients in the gum that you buy at like the gas station breaks down the acids in the nicotine gum, and then chemically changes it so you're not getting that nicotine replacement. If you were using a lozenge, you shouldn't chew it. It should just melt and dissolve in your mouth. You can use this as a replacement or when you're having a craving. Claire, how did you use it?
I used it as a replacement. I threw away my cigarettes and then just started using the gum. But that is important to tell people if you're suggesting the gum to make sure they read the directions, because I can't tell you how many people I talked to about it that were like, oh, that made me sick. I never wanted to do that again. I'm like, well, were you chewing it like gum? And they're like, yeah, it's gum. I'm like, but it's more like, it's like a dip. You chew it till it's soft and then you shove it in your gums and then it absorbs.
Yeah.
But yeah, I completely replaced cigarettes with it.
Is one flavor
Stacey,
better than another?
No, they all suck.
Stacey, what did you say about the lozenges? Why is it that like is it just the way it absorbs, obviously, if you chew it all up, or?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it doesn't, so the gum has like a hard coating on it where the lozenges don't, so you don't need to like activate it. It's like if you put like a Jolly Rancher or a Lifesaver. I couldn't do it because I always chew the hard candies. So gum is easier for me.
The
Consistent.
lozenges are like an Altoid. Like you just
Oh.
kind of, that's what helped me. I just like stick it in my, between my cheek and my gums. But yeah, if you chew that up, it'll, that's a lot. Like at once, definitely make you sick.
Oh, okay. So that's kind of like what Claire said about putting it in your cheek and not like chewing it like gum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like a mint kind of thing,
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm learning lots too. There is a nicotine inhaler, believe it or not. It has to have a prescription, but is not as common, and people will misuse it. And should not be used more than 6 months. Nicotine spray. I don't think that would feel very very good. And it's also a prescription, 1 to 2 sprays per hour. So if somebody has a history of nasal polyps or sinus issues, it wouldn't be a good idea for them. Asthma, same with the inhaler asthma is, and side note, you can go to a dispensary and get a THC inhaler. I haven't heard anybody that's used them, but it's a thing. Non-nicotine replacement, so Zyban or bupropion, which is also Wellbutrin. It mimics the dopamine release. So it kind of is, so it's a mimetic. It stimulates those nicotinic receptors to release dopamine. And another side effect with Wellbutrin is weight loss. So if somebody has a mild food addiction, or even just seeks candy, or mine's French fries, for dopamine, they have those cravings. Wellbutrin may actually help with weight loss as well, and it's also used as a mild antidepressant.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about, what else it's used for, because I've heard it before, obviously. So
and it should start 1 week before quitting. So with both Chantix and Zyban, you're going to still smoke, and then set that quit date for 1 week after, because it has to build up in your system. So if you quit the same day you start taking Wellbutrin, it's not able to mimic the nicotine. It's not stimulating those receptors, so you're still going to have withdrawals, and you're still going to have pretty bad cravings. You start at a lower dose, so you start at 150 milligrams Q day, and then in 3 to 7 days, you bump it up to 300 milligrams Q day. Side effect is insomnia, dry mouth, and headache. And then Chantix is also prescription only. It binds to and blocks the nicotinic receptor site. So we're no longer having, nicotine is not making us release dopamine. So our body's saying, well, why do I want this? So Chantix, you're gonna start, it comes in a really big like pack. Has anyone used Chantix? It comes in a big like folder type thing. And it gives you the different doses. So you start with 0.5 milligram for the first 3 days, and then you bump it up to 0.5 milligram twice a day for 4 to 7 days, and then 1 milligram BID for up to 12 weeks. But it can have some crazy side effects. My husband took Chantix, and he has this really weird dream about seahorses. And then he got up and was getting ready for work and was in the shower and started like hallucinating, because hallucinations can be a side effect of seahorses, and it scared the crap out of him. And now Marilyn taunts him with it. He was such a nice kid. And my sister's husband, he would only dream in like gold. Like his color of his dreams were gold. Nightmares can be a side effect, really weird dreams, and then suicide and harmful thoughts. So really, people should be in a good state of mind when they take Chantix. And then alcohol and drug use can make that worse. So Zyban is also used for alcohol and drug addiction when people are going through rehab, and then after rehab, and when they're trying to stay sober, whereas Chantix only works for cigarettes.
Stacy, if a patient was using one of these, considering they're have a lot of side effects and whatnot, and let's say that they're like have a really bad day and they decide they just need a cigarette, but they're taking this medication, do you know what will help it happen to them?
So with the Wellbutrin, it may make them like more lightheaded. But with Chantix, they won't want to smoke. So they'll still smoke for the first 7 to 10 days. But then it's weird, they just like forget to smoke. So they won't have any effects if they smoke from Chantix. It won't. And then, so people that I've talked to who have taken Chantix, they say to smoke for the first 7 to 10 days. If they're a heavy smoker, they'll say 14. And once it starts to build up and it starts working, they'll say, you'll watch them smoke like a half cigarette, and then they say it tastes gross. And then at some point they're like, I didn't smoke all day, I forgot to smoke, because they're not having those cravings for it. Did that answer your question? Okay. Okay. A relapse versus a slip, which we've talked about. So a slip is a momentary lapse in judgment. It's, I'm going to take a drag of someone's cigarette, or can I bum a cigarette from you? And then they say, oh man, I really didn't want to do that. It was just a moment of weakness. I'm still going to quit smoking. I don't want to go back to this. A relapse is when somebody smokes consistently again, starts chewing consistently again, or vaping. So that's when we'd want to start from the beginning with the smoking cessation protocol. It takes people an average of 7 to 9 times to quit smoking. It's just an average. Even if it's, I'm going to quit and they try and they get a day or two, that's still considered they attempted. So some resources that you can give to your patient is the quit line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, and they will provide not nicotine replacement therapy, so patches, gums, lozenges. The American Lung Association has some good resources. The AARC has good resources that you can give to patients. The CDC, and then smokefree.org. Okay. Any questions about smoking cessation therapy? Okay, so MRE today is due by midnight. Your smoking cessation brochure assignment is due Tuesday. I'm like, what day is it? And then take a look at the smoking cessation discussion board. You've been assigned 2 sides of our ends and vaping a good smoking cessation tool. One side is pro, one side is con. You are required to get at least 1 article for your side and cite it using APA format. So if it's not double spaced and indented, that part I'm not worried about, as long as it's formatted with the excuse me, with the author first and then the date. That's the kind of formatting I'm looking for. That initial post isn't due until Tuesday, because I want you to do good research and have a well thought out post.
And our replies are due today, right?
Your replies for the first discussion board are due today. I did ask some of you questions, so make sure you're interacting with everybody. And then Tuesday is 100% online. So work at your own pace. If you want to sleep in, sleep it. I'll be available via email or phone, so you can call me. And then next Thursday is our project. All right, any questions? All right, well, you guys have a good rest of your day, and we'll see you on campus tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.